And thank you all for being here with us at the birth of this new organization. The rest of the afternoon, we have some things to share with you. So you want to go to, we're there. So we want to share our story, how we're here, our vision, what we want to do with the future of Icons, and then what's ahead for the next 2 days of this conference. And then, hopefully, we hope that this will be a meeting of the minds. This is meant to be a family organization, not just us up here or people on the stage speaking to you. We want to hear from you. We want to have you have a chance to talk amongst yourselves at your tables after we run through what you see listed on the screens. And then offer up ideas, questions, things that we should consider as we begin the truly hard work of helping women and female athletes take charge of their own future in sports. So with that, I think we are going to share the story of how we ended up here today. And I'm going to start with my personal story, and then Marshy is going to link in with how we met and her own personal story. So with that, sports has always been my first love. I was one of two daughters to a former collegiate football player. I think wanted sons. So my birthday presents and my Christmas presents were footballs and baseball gloves and sweatsuits. I think my first makeup gift was when I was like 14 years old, and it was chapstick. But this was great by me. I absolutely loved sports. I loved playing catch. I loved being out in the yard with my dad. I loved every sporting activity he exposed me to and participated in with me. The one bug that caught my attention was the tennis bug. So from a young age, tennis really drew me in. And who was it? I think Donna talked about tetherball. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, and we had a tetherball post out in our backyard, and my dad hooked up a tennis ball on the end of that tetherball post, and I batted it around until it fell off. And then together, he and I went to the hardware store, and we bought concrete and wood, and he built a backboard in the sheep barn. And I spent hours of my life with the baby sheep buying and the bales of hay, just batting a tennis ball against that wall. Eventually, I moved on, and by the time I was in 4th grade, my dad was waking up with me at 6 o'clock every morning and taking me to go hit tennis balls for an hour and a half before school every single day of my life. I don't think I missed one day unless one of us was sick. I loved what I was doing, obviously. Would go to school, then head out to the tennis courts and wait for my parents to wrap up with their jobs. My father was a doctor. My mom worked in a research lab at the universities. And I would stick around on the tennis courts until it was time for them to go home. So along that path, I got to meet some really interesting people. I got to grow up on the tennis courts, on the tennis tour, the national tennis tour with a whole bunch of other amazing athletes as well. Eventually, we headed off to Stanford, where I played for 4 years. Had a really neat time representing the United States at the World University Games. Played a couple professional events in the summers, and got to play at some big-name tournaments and against some players that did far better than I did at making a career out of sport. But I have memories and I have experiences I wouldn't trade for the world. And as I look back on that journey, I think there's probably not a person here in this room or a young woman who hasn't found her passion and energy and love of sports. There's probably not some part of that story you can relate to. And when I look back on that, I think there were there are two things I want to share about that that I took for granted. I never doubted that I was respected. I never doubted that the rules were fair, and I never doubted that I was equal, not in ability or a way to beat the men and boys that were competing at events near me, but that they considered me an equal athlete, deserving of equal respect. And I felt that from the other tennis players. I felt that from the organizers. I felt that from coaches. I felt that from parents and anyone that was around in the audience. I never felt disrespected or demeaned. The second thing I wanted to share was that my grandmother would sit me down at least once a year, and she was also a tennis fanatic, but she would say, Kim, don't forget us, and don't take this experience for granted, because I didn't have these opportunities. She didn't have a chance to play tennis in school, in high school, that didn't exist for college. And she said, what you're getting the chance to do is so cool, and I wish I had had it. So I felt very much like I was having a chance to play for her, and she loved following my journey. It didn't matter how far I went or if I won or lost. She was excited for me. After graduating from college, I stayed involved in sports. So during grad school, I helped out with programs that the athletic department was putting on, and helped the undergraduate athletes try to get as much out of their experience at school as they could. A few years later, I served on the Stanford Athletic Board, trying to stay connected to the community that had offered so much to me. And I got involved in all of my kids' sports, trying to expose them to as many neat opportunities as I had had growing up, including my now 6-foot daughter, putting her in gymnastics. Some not so great choices, but at least they got exposure. She also tried ballet. That didn't work very well either. But I took every chance I could also when people would reach out, or mothers with young daughters, or I would see kids at the tennis courts and I would happen to be by. I took every chance I could to encourage people, because sports is just an amazing opportunity for all young kids and for every person to learn about their bodies, to feel strength, so goal set, to learn skills, make friendships. There are so many. We all know the wonderful gifts of athletics. And I wanted to make sure the next generation got to take advantage of the same lessons I'd had access to. So with all that, I was certainly determined to encourage my kids to experience sports in as full of a way as they could. So we, both my husband and I, 4 kids, encouraged them to choose something to dedicate themselves to. Siri. So they all ended up swimmers. I have no tennis players. It's ridiculous. And I have already told them I'm claiming the next generation. There's going to be some eye-hand coordination in there somewhere. But over the years between my playing days and today, an idea had been percolating in my mind for a long time as I watched my husband connect in business with other athletes throughout industry, both in sports and in the business world. What I noticed was that instant camaraderie that a lot of us have when we connect with another woman who's been involved in sports. You're like, oh, I get you. You understand dedication. You understand commitment. You understand early morning practice. Like, we've been on the walk together, right? The same thing is true for men in sports. And there's an instant connection when my husband would be working on a business deal or traveling and meeting new clients or looking at buying another company. If there was a sports connection, it was an immediate, I understand you, I get you. And that facilitated a lot of advantages in the working world and in the sports world. I watched a lot of our peers leverage that passion into positions of power and influence and into a lot of success. I didn't see that same thing happening for the women that I had been involved in sports with. And I think the reason and the conclusion I came to is that the organic growth of that network for men, it is not the same for women. So we all create, if you envision all of us as threads in a fabric, when women step out, for better or for worse, because of our biology, to raise kids and have a family, we pull some of the threads of that fabric out, and it is very difficult to weave them back in. Enough of those threads get pulled out, and that canvas is not as structured as it is for men. It's harder for women to leverage that. So that idea, I've been thinking, women need a network. We need a way to jump back in, to connect with the people who are these amazing, brilliant, dedicated, passionate, super smart, intelligent women that I met along my life. We need a way to reconnect, to put ourselves back into influencing both the sports world that we care so much about, and also being able to leverage our skills in the business and commerce world. But I didn't know how that was going to happen. I knew that the web and, all these interesting social media outlets, that was all allowing people to connect in new ways, but I didn't know how this was going to unfold. Let's see. So while this whole idea was sitting there, it wasn't until this last year, in fact, these last few months, that I realized a network of female athletes wasn't just a helpful idea, it was a necessity. The time had come for us to get on this, to form it, and it needed to happen now. As most of you are aware, I have a daughter who swims in the Ivy League. And this was the first year that we have seen a male swimmer at NCAA swimming receive awards, records, and finally even receive the accolade of Woman Swimmer of the Meet at the Ivy League Championships. I had a front row seat to this, and I was witnessing just how easily the respect and fair treatment of women is cast aside. And even how far people will go to silence women when they have something to say. Maybe even the worst part of it, how few people in positions of power right now are willing to recognize and protect women who are facing unfair, vulnerable, and in the case of sports, even dangerous situations. So, at tomorrow's press conference, you will hear a lot more about my views and experiences as a parent during the swim season. But for now, I want you to know a couple things. 80 to 90%, maybe more, of the girls that participated in those meets feel like this was grossly unfair and that they were wronged. I had hundreds of phone calls with parents, too afraid to talk, but all feeling the same way. What can we do? How is this happening? What's wrong with our world? And I had friends reach out to me that I hadn't heard from since my competitive days, who were aware that I had a daughter competing in the Ivy Leagues and in swimming, asking me what did I know about it, what kind of organizations existed, what could they do, how could they get involved. And it was unbelievable to me how many people came out of the woodwork to have these conversations, and I'm sure a lot of you felt that yourselves. The quiet conversations, the one-on-ones were happening on a daily basis, if not hourly in some cases. So I watched the Ivy League request the girls to be quiet. I watched them tell the girls to place their thoughts and feelings below those of males. I watched the intimidation and coercion in mandatory meetings and in announcements at every single dual meet and championship meet. I have kept and read the emails suggesting counseling to make yourself okay with shared locker rooms with males. I watched the girls over the season realize very slowly, but very really, that no one wanted to hear them. No one was going to protect them, and no one in a position of power cared about their fair competition or their treatment. I watched the NCAA stumble and then back down and ultimately decide they would do nothing for women as well. At this point, I had been in touch with so many people, ready to do anything to save more women and girls from having to suffer these same experiences. People determined to see women respected as equal members of society and equally valued athletes. Nancy, Donna De Verona, the wonderful women at the Women's Liberation Front, Women's Declaration International, Concerned Women for America, Independent Women's Forum. I met politicians, athletes, parents, scientists from around the world even, who are here today and speaking with us tomorrow, like Emma Hilton. The list goes on. And I know a lot of us have felt this power. Nancy alone gathered over 7,500 signatures and 500 Olympians for a petition put together in unbelievably rapid form. It was a huge accomplishment. I knew when I saw things like this happening, I knew that if we could unify our voices somehow, that we could harness this energy and actually make a difference. I didn't know how or when, and I didn't know just how deeply other people across the country had been feeling.
I'm so engrossed, I don't want you to stop. So switching gears a little bit, I have a lot of similarities in how I grew up as an athlete in childhood. We've diverged and then met on this topic. But in stepping back, I started swimming when I was 6 years old in Northern Virginia. Let's see if does that work? Yeah. Kim hasn't seen this. That's me at my childhood pool, Canterbury Woods Swim Pool. My mom actually doesn't even know how I learned to swim. She can't remember that. But I dove in and swam my first race across the diving well in our neighborhood pool and miraculously won. And when I touched the wall, I got out dripping wet, and they hand you a ribbon on the spot at 6 and under. And I had a dripping wet blue ribbon, and I thought, this is it. Swimming was the vehicle to winning, and I love to win. So I continued swimming throughout school. My mom is from South Korea. She grew up on a small farm, and she's the traditional Korean tiger mom, but in the best possible way. I remember her literally wrestling me out of bed at 4:30 a.m. to go to swim practice before school. We trained, went to school, went straight back to the pool, trained again, did homework, and then fell asleep that night and did it all over again. So there were many, many years of that. I ended up being recruited to the University of Arizona on a full swimming scholarship, largely in part to Title IX and all the advantages that the women, many of you sitting here in the audience today, have afforded the next generation and beyond. In my swim career, my freshman and sophomore year were, I would say, good, mediocre. I made a lot of incredible best friends to this day. Sisters in the sport, we trained, lived, went to school together, built just incredible bonds that have lasted this many years. And at the end of my sophomore year, it was the Olympic trials. And I trained that whole summer just completely burnt out. I really didn't want to be in the pool when I was practicing. It was like nothing I had felt before, and my training obviously suffered quite a bit. Going into that Olympic trials, I had very low confidence because I knew that I basically didn't put in the work. And I swam the 100 backstroke at Olympic trials, and if I didn't get dead last, I was very close. I remember touching the wall and looking at my time, looking over at my coach on the side, and in about the 3 minutes walk it took me to get over to my coach, I decided I'm never going to feel like this again. It was a terrible feeling. So I told my coach, the first thing I said, I didn't even reference the swim, the terrible swim I just did. The first thing I said was, I'm going to be top 3 at NCAAs next year. And surprisingly, he did not laugh at me, although he should have. And he said, okay, and we decided right there, we started making a plan. So the next season, my junior year at Arizona, I showed up very laser focused because I had made my statement, and we had a goal setting workshop with one of the assistant coaches, Bill Behrens. He talked about setting extremely specific goals for the season, meaning what are your splits for each lap going to be? How many kicks are you going to take off of the wall? How many strokes per lap are you going to swim? I want you to be that specific, and then write down the splits of every lap you're going to swim, the time, and then tell me the time you're going to take to swim and finish the race. So I took it very seriously. I went back and I followed his instruction. I thought about it carefully, and Beth Botsford was a senior on the team when I was a freshman. She won an Olympic gold medal in the 100 backstroke at the age of 15, and she was one of my swim idols and now one of my teammates. She had the school record, which was a 52.83. We, at Arizona, plaster all the records all over the wall on the swim deck. So as you're swimming thousands of laps back and forth, you're staring at these records. So I knew it by heart, because that was my event, 100 back. And I said, well, if I'm going to pick a time, I might as well try to beat Beth's school record. And since it was a 52.83, I'm not going to put myself too far out there. So I'm going to go a 52.82. Because that's good enough, right? So I said, that's what I'm going to do. And throughout the season, I changed my goal of being top 3 into, I might as well just win. So I was so focused on that time that at some point in the season very on, I was thinking about that so much that I began to dream it at night, and I was swimming the race in my mind many times a day. And then everything in my life kind of aligned, focused on that goal as well. So it's the first semester I got a 4.0 in school. I was performing well in other areas of life because I was really determined to accomplish that. And at the end of the season, I showed up on deck extremely confident that I had done everything I could to accomplish this. one of the advantages to that year was I could put everything into accomplishing that dream. And I had no distractions. I just had to do the work. And I swam that meet and touched the wall in exactly a 52.82. Yeah, I still don't know how, but I think it's, the fact that I could focus so precisely, clearly align mind and body by the end of the season. And, and thinking back to some of the challenges that the girls this year had to face in the distraction of not being able to focus on their race, which is a gift, I realize now, a true gift that I had when I was swimming. So the next season, sadly, I blew my shoulder out, and that ended my Olympic pursuit. That was another lesson learned, that you never know when your last event is going to be, because sometimes it's not up to you. And so in tying back to what Kim had suggested, the trajectory of athletes propelled into the next step, which is your career, I told a similar story to what I did in my first interview in medical sales, and I got the job with no work experience, based on my experience in swimming and this story I could tell. And I spent 10 years in the medical sales profession, and won many awards, succeeded on many levels with a lot of wonderful teammates in my career, also in a very heavily male-dominated industry. One of the highlights was winning top sales region in the United States in teeny-weeny, as my dad likes to say, teeny-weeny Reno. So of all the cities in America, we won in Reno, Nevada. So this is a picture of the award ceremony. I was the only woman in the company to win as a sales rep of the year. Thank you. This is not a brag. This is just the fact of some of the obstacles in certain industries that women have to face. But it's a testament that with hard work and determination, we can accomplish anything. Since then, I have a 6-year-old daughter of my own and a 3-year-old son, so I have stepped away from the working world to be a stay-at-home mom. And I watched what transpired over the season after living in complete denial for most of the season. I was actively turning off media that was reporting on the story. I would not click on headlines. I pushed it aside because I was sure that surely someone else is going to ensure fairness for the swimmers this year. And as each month passed and I kept seeing headlines, I grew more and more concerned until I witnessed the Ivy League Conference Championships, and I said, uh-oh, the train is off the tracks. And I think I cried for 2 weeks straight, just alone on the bedroom floor, just feeling powerless. Dr. Hooven, I see you. I recently listened to your Joe Rogan podcast, in which she made Joe cry. And so I'm feeling okay about crying for a minute, but felt very powerless at what was happening to, quote, my sport. So my teammates and I started talking to one another. I had finally decided I was going to listen to something in the news. So I actually heard Seth Houston, who's here. He's the only NCAA swim coach to speak out this season.
Thank you, Seth.
Yes. I listened to his interview with Megyn Kelly, and at one point she said, if you don't speak now, you will forget it. You will regret it for the rest of your life. And I said, "You're right, Megyn. You're right." And so I gathered with teammates after one of my close friends asked me if I would write a letter on behalf of the University of Arizona swim team so that all of them could collectively sign, which is something that we took a key from the University of Texas women, who had just recently also written a team letter and signed it with their names and accomplishments at the bottom of the letter. So that had triggered our response. I worked day and night with a handful of teammates to release a letter. We began the day Leah Thomas won the 500 freestyle at the NCAA championships. We sent that to the NCAA Board of Directors 94 days ago, and there has been no response. On the letter, we have 47 signers. We have Olympic gold medalists, silver medalists, multiple NCAA Women of the Year, multiple NCAA Women of the Year finalists, at least 10 NCAA champions, world champions. This list is unbelievable, of which I am the least of the women on this list. So we sent that, and I thought, okay, surely now the NCAA will do something. Clearly, that was not the case. I went on every news outlet that would have me to interview. Some of them are here today. We were on Fox News multiple times. In the Washington Times, we were on many podcasts, radio shows. There were many articles written at the time, and surely then something would happen. And I found that we still were getting no response. And so I was connecting morning, noon, and night. My husband says, Dan is here also, my husband says he's gonna build a husband support group for lost wives.
Totally.
Kim and I's husbands are gonna be the founders of that one. And I started calling, and I've talked to many of you on the phone for many hours, and got connected to Riley Gaines, who is here as well, and she said, you really need to call Kim Jones. And I thought, okay, called her up and
Shared your idea.
shared an idea I had. I had learned that the NCAA, the National Association of Collegiate Directors of Athletics, was having their big annual convention in Las Vegas this weekend. And I thought, after all my years of experience in medical device sales working the exhibition booths, I wonder if they have exhibit booths in their meeting. And so I found out they did, and they weren't asking very many questions, so I reserved one of those booths inside their meetings, and initially my visual was, even if I'm standing in the booth alone with some sort of flyer to talk to them directly, that's what I was gonna do. And then I connected with Dennis Persley, who's a coach, 5-time Olympic coach, one of the most decorated in the world, who talked about his experience with the East Germans. He said that the doping was prevalent, it was obvious, everyone on deck knew about it, everyone talked about it, and yet it was not PC to bring it up at the time. And so there were whispers on deck, but no one was standing up formally and publicly and making a proclamation. And he said that eventually, when the Chinese began doping as well, he said we had enough, and we called a press conference, and we said we're just going to speak directly to the media. And so with his idea, I said, well, that's what we're going to do too. So I said, we're going to do a press conference. I don't know who's going to be on it, but these are my two ideas. And those are the two ideas. When I ended up calling Kim Jones, I told her about. And when we got together, it exploded into what you're seeing today.
It was... It was one conversation lasting about 1 hour. Marshy laid out her thoughts, and I was like, we're going way bigger. We're going way bigger. Here's the opportunity to put together everything that I had been thinking about, and I found another person who had the scheming and brainstorming power and passion that I did, and I knew that we could pull this off. Didn't know that people would actually attend, but I thought we could at least get something started, and Marshy and I have joked back and forth a whole lot about this conference being, Marshy has shared a picture of Jeff Bezos standing next to this really dinky-looking Amazon sign. Like, you have to start somewhere, all right? And then I have a really funny story I'm going to throw in. So my husband is an entrepreneur, and he has started some various businesses. And he went, when we were still students at Stanford, he went to an entrepreneur, like, trade show, kind of it was where they were looking to hire people for startup companies. And he went there because he was starting a company, and he was trying to figure out, like, how should I advertise? Should I go here and put up a booth? And he came back from that, and he goes, there are these two really dorky-looking guys standing behind a sign on cardboard that said, Google. And so we have talked a bunch about those two examples and been like, this is our start. And I think we don't have a cardboard sign at this point, because it was amazing to feel the passion and power and the force of women behind us, and just people willing to jump on and do just about anything to get this going. So really being here, that we've pulled all this off, this is a credit to everyone here, not here, up here. Thank you so much for being here. And I think Marshy asked Siri just this morning when we were talking how many days ago that hour-long conversation was.
Drum roll. No. 54 days ago, Kim and I met.
We did not have a name. We did not have a location. We just had a vision for what we wanted to do, and we felt like women needed people to speak on their behalf. We needed to build a network. We needed a collective voice, and we needed to be able to harness the power and passion of these amazing athletes that we had a lifetime, short lifetime, I hope, of exposure to. And so that's where this has started. It's been a 7-week journey to get here, which is crazy. And so in 2 days after that conversation, we had a name. I had probably 10 pages of paper all scattered around my house with just every letter of the alphabet, words that we could use. And then I tried to come up with a list of words that I thought embodied what being a female athlete meant, how important this was. And that was the birth of Icons. So it's what set me on a path in tennis, was having women to look up to, being able to see Martina Navratilova, Chris Evert-Lloyd on television, and thinking, I want to be there someday. And I know hundreds of thousands of girls saw those same images And for Marshy, it was the women in swimming, and just all of these iconic women who have paved the path for us so that we have a chance to dream. And when we figured out that that acronym could work for the Independent Council on Women's Sports, and we could center women, it all came together. So within 2 days, we had a name, we had a venue, thank you to Marshy. We had a few speakers. We had Nancy and Donna behind us, and all of their huge network and influence. We had the advocacy groups, and we had vast support. Well, the numbers are huge behind us. But now it has to turn into something real. So we don't know how to put on a conference. We don't know how to start a nonprofit. But a lot of other people do, and a lot of other people are willing to guide us and help us, and we're going to make this work. So with that, do we want to talk about the next 2 days? Go back. Never mind. Okay, so for the next 2 days, you all have an agenda in front of you. We have a great conference laid out. Tomorrow, you want to talk about the press conference?
So we're going to have a breakfast, a light breakfast available at 8:30. We have invited the international news media to come. So they will be set up. We ask that you please wear your sports athletic t-shirt gear if you have it. If not, that's completely fine too. We'll have a panel of athletes up here who have been recently affected by multiple instances of discrimination, speaking their minds, including Dr. Ross Tucker is going to be the representative from the scientific panel. And then we're going to have some athlete vignettes of women across all sports and coaches who would like to make a short statement. So it's going to be a really, I think, inspired, motivating, and informative conversation to educate on. I think what was concerning to me was understanding how many sports have been already affected, how many athletes have been suffering for this for many years across many sports and all age groups. So we are going to try and give a voice to many athletes in the morning. So please invite your friends to attend that in the morning.
And then we are going to have a break for lunch, and then we are going to have our distinguished scientists speak to us. Yeah, we're all very much looking forward to hearing from these experts in various scientific fields. We have Dr. Ross Tucker, Dr. Emma Hilton, Dr. Carol Hubin, and Dr. Colin Wright, all getting set to give us some very informative presentations. And then in the evening, okay, then we're going to socialize. So we'll take a break from science, and we'll just have a nice chance to talk and enjoy some cocktails together. The next day, we're going to hear from women's advocacy groups and organizations across the aisle, and we will hear what people are doing both up at Capitol Hill in the political arena and in the public policy arena. How are they influencing policy, and what does the landscape look like right now? What can we do moving forward? And then we have a wonderful legal panel talking to us about the current state of affairs. How can women find representation? These are going to be lawyers and former athletes that have spent their lives dedicated to Title IX and to helping women receive fair and respectful treatment under the law. We'll also hear from young women who have been personally affected by litigation and who are part of litigation, what that's been like, and hear how women can be connected with lawyers when they need to find that help, and what kinds of resources are available, whether it's financial or other forms of support. Then we'll take another break for lunch, and we will return and have some people talking to us both from the United States. Nancy Hogshead's going to talk to us about working with governing bodies of sport, and Fiona McKenna is going to talk to us about what things look like over in Europe. So she's flown all the way across the pond to share with us yes, thank you, Fiona, to share with us what the conversations look like in other parts of the world. Following that, we're going to have an exciting panel of the icons of women's sports. So we'll get to hear from some truly impressive people that have, that have laid down some legendary careers for us to follow, as well as women who've kind of broken through barriers in other fields. And we're excited to hear from them. So here we are. We've arrived at our purpose, and our purpose is to serve female athletes. If you want 3-4 words to tell people what we do, that's what we do. We serve female athletes, and we want women to be in charge of their own destiny. And in sports, that means that women need the power to shape the future of their own sports. Okay? So how do we accomplish this? What do we do? If we build up the ability to reach out to a large base of athletes and supporters, we believe that we can do a lot of good work. So first, do you have your microphone on? Because we're going back and forth here on this one.
It's on.
All right, good. First, we want the ability to create petitions at every level. So if we need petitions at state levels to advocate for young athletes in particular states, if we need petitions put together to advocate with certain bodies of sport, if we need national level petitions, if we need international level petitions, we need to have a network that we can pull together. Like what Nancy was able to do for swimming, we need to be able to do that across every level. So I see this as, like, to speak technically, big database where we can go both directions. We can go at the state level, we can pull everyone from Colorado, we can pull everyone from, Tennessee, wherever it is. And on another level, if we need to talk to rowing or volleyball, we can pull everyone who's involved in that sport. So we need to build our network. We need people who don't necessarily want to be even involved on a grand scale, but they want to make sure that they are part of the pressure that we're able to apply to the right people. So pull people in, folks. That's what we need. Marshy, another thing?
I think you stole my thing.
Did I? Oh, go to, I did,
So
I did.
We're going to use that to put pressure on sports governing bodies as they're determining rules, as we've seen recently, as we speak.
And we also think that with a huge body of athletes, we will be able to elevate the voices of former athletes and parents. And this is part of what I was talking about with the network, where women kind of lose touch and fall out. If we are able to create this network and solidify it with access, so everyone has access to each other, we will be able to use those former athletes and parents who care about the sports that they are invested in and involved in.
We can also build relationships within the world of business and commerce that surround sports, going back to Kim's story of networking and the opportunities available to each other as we continue to make relationships with one another.
And something I'm not super familiar with, but I know a lot of people who are, we can build social media campaigns because we need to have that outreach.
Also, we hope one day to be able to financially support athletes. That's one of the issues in current athletes being able to speak out without fear of being dropped from sponsorships. If we can afford to financially assist athletes moving forward, we hope to remove that barrier.
And finally, and very importantly, we need to have the ability to connect lawyers, policymakers, and athletes in ways that they have not been linked before. So with that, we hope to have an organization for women in place to influence policy, rules, promotion, and everything else involved in sport at state, national, and international levels. Now we need your help. Go ahead. You're going to invite me.
Okay, you'll see some note cards on your tables. We just want you to talk as a table and write down some questions, ideas, thoughts as to where you see this going. Give us suggestions. This is a total brainstorming opportunity to give us ideas of some other goals to have in mind, questions you may have that you want answered over the next 2.5 days that we can apply and make sure to address.
Go to it. Thank you all.